Everything is up for grabs. Supreme Court, where individual rights are supposed to be protected, think it's fine if government invades our financial privacy, spies on us in our bedrooms, regulates church schools, and restricts our free speech. Meanwhile, at the Congress, everything is up for grabs. Everything is up for grabs, as long as it's yours.
Welcome to On Second Thought. I'm Crystal Wagner, today's co-host, and now the host and producer, and my father, whom I love and am so proud of, for defending the truth, rooting out the corruption in local and state and federal government, and defending the poor people and the overtaxed Americans. The real good guy in the white hat, William Wagner.
Thank you, Crystal, my darling firstborn daughter. Thank you very much for the intro. I am the guy in the white hat, and I want to remind you this October 8th was a great day for those of the Wagner family. That is the 181st birthday of my great-grandfather, who just happened to have this picture taken when he was elected sheriff of Door County, Wisconsin in 1874. I think November of 74, took office in 75, and died of gangrene infection from a gunshot wound in 78. May he rest in peace. But that's what the show's not about tonight. Hang with me. You see this pack of papers I'm holding in my hand? This is what's known as a chain of title. It says so right up here in the corner. Chain of title. Now, when you buy a home or sell a home, this becomes really important. In the state of Wisconsin, where I came from, years ago, I'm not talking about recent decades, but way back, when you bought a property, you got one of these and had all kinds of paperwork attached, and you got the real thing. This is the chain of title that the title insurance companies look for to insure your title. Now, when you buy a home or you sell a home, usually the buyer and the seller each pay part of the title insurance. But the reason it's good to have both of them pay some part of it is that it insures both parties. If only the buyer pays it, the seller, if there's a later claim to his title insurance, stick with me, this is relevant to the mortgage foreclosures going on. I know this sounds boring, but it's relevant to what's happening right now and for the last decade in America. The seller, if he didn't pay any part of the title insurance on selling, and as a buyer didn't pay any when he was buying, he might have difficulty defending title if it turns out he bought a property that was fraudulently sold. Up comes the issue with a great star. He was in many movies, named Randy Quaid. Now, Randy Quaid has a wife, Evie Quaid, and they thought they had a home in Montecito at 1355 East Mountain Road, which is in Santa Barbara County. The problem was they came home one day and found somebody else had taken possession of their home, and they didn't understand it at all. It appears to me, looking through lots of documents, that they have been defrauded. What looks worse to me is that they went into their guest house. They claim they didn't break or disturb anything. They found or saw a painting that belonged to Evie Quaid, painted just for her by her father. Therefore, it's a family heirloom. So they kind of thought they were in the right place. Now, according to what Evie Quaid tells me, they then tried to go into the main house and it was locked and they couldn't get in. Their old keys didn't work. but they still had the keys to the guest house, and they were able to get into that. However, the main house keys, this sits on an acre of land, the main house keys didn't work anymore. They found this strange, and they were upset. Now, if you don't know who Randy Quaid is, he was in many credit card commercials. Randy, this is Randy when he got married to Evie. They were young and happy, and Evie tells me the same year they got married, there's Randy. Now, you may recognize him from the commercials and the TV shows made for movies he's been in. That same year they got married, they bought this house on East Mountain Road in Santa Barbara. They believed they owned the house, they occupied the house, they put stuff into the house, and they put stuff into the guest house. But he's busy doing films, he's all over the country, and they're traveling. I think he was knocking down, I don't know, in the neighborhood of maybe $800,000 a year between commercials and movies. And he probably had several other homes. But this one time, he comes back here around 2008-ish, 2009-ish, and he's locked out of his own main house. Oh, this is a little disturbing, of course, and it didn't sit well with him. It turned out some people named Tariki are now in the house, but who got the house from them? And here's a document. It's stamped. And go to the next document, Reggie, and the next one. It appears to me, now that's the painting right there that Evie Quaid alleges belonged to her, and it's, she thinks, being held by the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department as quote-unquote evidence. I don't know evidence of what, but it seems strange to me. I had to wait a week to get someone from the property division of the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department to call me back and say, hey, yeah, we got to see if we can let you look at the evidence. I'm just saying, hey, I was down there Thursday, a week ago from yesterday. This is a live show on the 19th of October, 2018. And believe it or not, Sheriff Bill Brown wasn't available, and he still hasn't called me back. I asked to talk to Bill Brown, the elected sheriff. It's a week later. I still haven't heard from Bill Brown. Hey, Bill, out there in Lompoc, give me a call. I want to talk to you about this Quaid case, this alleged warrant for their arrest for going into their own house they thought was their house. It seems strange to me that the Quaids have had to stay in Canada after they went up to receive an award near Vancouver, I understand, some film award, and then they couldn't come back safe to the United States. Evie claims they've been arrested because of this, what they call bogus warrant, more than 4 times, 5 times, maybe more. And she doesn't want to come back here and have herself and her well-known, famous celebrity, Randy Quaid husband, arrested again. So I'm wondering, why would the Sheriff's Department allow them to leave and then put out a warrant? And there's some documents. Yeah, let's see that document. Just, that's enough. Just need to see that document. There's some documents, and it appears their manager or personal manager, friend, was a guy named Bruce Berman. And it appears Bruce Berman took possession of the home at some time. Now, I called Nanette Tariki and asked her if she'd ever met Bruce Berman. She said no. She had never met Bruce Berman. I'll take her word for it. I think it's possible she, as the buyer, is a victim, just as the Quaids, as the involuntary sellers, may have also been the victim. It looks like one of those perfect white-collar crimes. Now, I would like to talk to the assistant DA that put out that warrant. But I don't think he wants to talk to me. I don't think they want to show the evidence against the Quaids, if they even have any. I've got substantial evidence already that something is amiss with what the sheriff's department did and the district attorney's department did 10 years ago, which I think was before Joyce Dudley. It was under that other dishonest, I'm not talking about Tom Snedden, and we're coming up on the anniversary here of his death. Thank God he's gone. He was, the guy that fabricated false evidence, tried to get his own people, who he called as witnesses, to lie about the phone evidence, but that's the Michael Jackson case. I'm not talking about Snedden. It was Christine Stanley that followed him. So why does Joyce Dudley continue the wrongs started by Christine and or Snedden? But remember, Snedden just put a print on the DA's office to do things crookedly and wrongly for a long, long time and lie all the way through. And he was smashed by Tom Mesereau. When the jury came back on June 13th, I think it was, June 13th of 2005, and said, not guilty, 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 and not guilty in the 4 lesser included misdemeanors, which he snuck in at the end, which was an admission by Snedden that he knew he had failed to prove all the elements of all the 10 felonies. Why? Because he had fabricated evidence and the jury saw it. I think if the Quaids come back, if they come back strong, have the right attorney, this whole issue will get resolved. Evie Quaid says they didn't break a mirror. I asked Nanette Taricki, do you have a receipt? Can you prove you paid $7,000 for a mirror you allege was broken by the Quaids? Well, I asked her to do a face-to-face interview. She's not quite ready to do that because she doesn't realize, I think, that she also could be as equal a victim as the Quaids. Now, there is a forensic document examiner who a large city called Seattle employed her to check their records, and she found that most of their recorded home mortgage stuff in an area that they asked her to look at were filled with fraud and dishonest paperwork. Well, the city up there didn't take that too well, but they had made a contract, I guess, to pay her, so they still had to pay her. They wanted to know, and she went in and did her forensic thing and came back and said, yep, a lot of fraud here, a lot of homes, mortgages, this is fraud. Another thing bothers me is Evie claims that the title insurance, and that's why I showed you these big, thick papers. This is an inch thick on just one property, insisted on getting the entire chain of title. Normally, people never ask for this. It costs an extra couple $100. But you should, because you can read through it, and if there's a fraudulent foreclosure, you can detect it. But if you never get this, you don't read it, just because they give you title insurance for $300 or $1,000 or whatever, that doesn't mean it's a clean title. It just means somebody's going to pay off if a lawsuit comes. Now, why is that relevant? Because I could see a situation where the current occupiers that think they own the property because they got a title, and the reason I raise that issue because very recently as 2016, apparently one of the Quaids, Evie or Randy, informed the title company that they're the real owners, and they were hog-swoggled out of it. Now, I looked at their signatures and asked Evie, is that your signature? And Evie said, not even close, or words to that effect. So I'm thinking, who are the Quaids connected to that could possibly get Randy's signature, but maybe not Evie's signature? Well, apparently he had some association with some company operating or near the Warner Brothers complex in LA. And it appears there could be somebody, and he may be dead now, who had access to their documents with Randy's signature. So Randy's signature may come roughly close, but not good enough. But Evie's signature, not even close. And if those signatures were forged and then a warrant's issued for the Quaids, either intentionally or stupid chances that the current occupants really believed they were trespassers, maybe they thought they owned the house. Trespass is a crime. You must have intention to commit a crime. There's no such thing as accidental crimes. So here's what, there's two videos here. I'm going to show you the first one. This is Marie McDonald. She's a forensic expert. Listen to what she said about the Quaids. Could happen to you. This is very close to East Mountain Road.
Is the El Sapien.
We blocked out some people that didn't want their faces seen.
In this cold weather in Ohio, it's going to be 10, 20 below zero. Don't leave your home. Because you know what? When those companies say they have your mortgage, unless you have a lawyer that can put his finger or her finger on that mortgage, you don't have that mortgage. And you're going to find they can't find the paper up there on Wall Street. So I say to the American people, you be squatters in your own homes. Don't you leave. In Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and Illinois and all these other places where our people are being treated like chattel. And this Congress is stymied.
I mean, we're talking about
You can.
Yeah, they took out insurance on a loan known as WMALT 2007 OA3, and that's its intrusive number, is it? The haunch number? And they took out insurance on it and it was paid off per a Bloomberg report 17 times. I have a copy of the report, but it doesn't matter. They are getting rulings out of the courts. The courts are not even looking at the reports to make the determination of the fraud that is quite evident. That same property was taken over by SPS after I was approved for a loan modification, and that was 3 years ago. SPS took it over. I've applied just with SPS 7 times, and just before the takeover I was approved by Chase. Then I called and said, your loan is now being serviced by SPS. SPS has treated me just terrible. I'm tired of having to correspond with them. There's a new homeowner Bill of Rights addendum that took effect January 1st, 2014 that says once you submit a loan modification, they have 5 days to let you know if there's anything else they need. If not, they're supposed to remove the notice of default. All this stuff together makes it really nice. You know, where some of this information might be subpoenaed sometimes. Rocco's in his truck. Clear the way, you guys.
Oh, wow.
Camera? You're on. Let's roll it. This is Maria McDonald.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Nice to meet you. It's a beautiful day in Santa Barbara.
The best forensic expert in all of the United States. She dissects the reports and follows a paper trail of money.
I follow the entire life cycle of the loan. I can audit the loan from the application all the way through the early disclosures, through the closing, through the forensic accounting, follow chain of title, trace the securitization of the loan, and find the flaws that hopefully can help people save their homes. So hopefully that's what I'm here to do.
Great.
You're in the right place, in the right county at the right time.
Man, I guess I am.
We have
I
massive fraud going on here.
can't believe the situations and the good people, that I'm meeting who should never be in this situation.
One-
It is just,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 victims right here that are getting bad rulings from the same judge known as Judge Keck in the Santa Barbara Superior Court.
Wow.
We have the evidence, we have the experts, we have the toxologist. We know the crime has happened. The judges are looking the other way to the crime scene, and we are all joining forces to get momentum, to get justice under one nation, under liberty. Thank you. Back to Maria.
oh, well, I don't know quite what to say, except I have to write a very important letter today to your Attorney General, Kamala Harris. My friend, Svetlana Ivanova, is going to attend an event tomorrow, and she will be meeting the Attorney General. And so hopefully I can compose a short letter asking her to devote some resources to really looking into this. I mean, you have to get the prosecutors have to get to the root of these problems. I mean, this is unnatural. And I know from doing the work that I've done, I know how these loans were designed to fail from the inception. And really the evidence is there if you know how to find it, document it, and so forth. I wish I could clone myself because so many people are in desperate need of this type of help. It's a rare skill set that can actually do what needs to be done here. So hopefully, even after I leave, we'll have an opportunity to work together and try and see what's really going on. I'd be interested in seeing some of these judgments coming out of the court, because if there is, and I don't know that there is, but if there is judicial corruption or prejudice, I mean, that really needs to be looked into.
After you look into it, will there be a possibility of getting Judge Geck and some of the other crooked judges removed from the office?
Well, that's a good question, and it's been done before, I'll say that.
What happened in Seattle after you audited the Seattle County Recorder's documents?
They tried to suppress the results of my report. Yeah, we conducted really an intensive examination of a population of just under 200 assignments of deed of trust. The mission was that I was given by the Seattle City Council to determine whether those assignments of deed of trust were valid in light of the Washington Deed of Trust Act and statutes, and in particular in light of the Washington State Supreme Court's decision in Metropolitan Mortgage Group versus Kristen Bain. And I found that none of those were valid because they involved assignments that were executed by certifying officers of mortgage electronic registration systems. And really, when you dig deep, you see that MERS has nothing to assign, and especially in a state that uses a deed of trust as opposed to a mortgage. MERS can't even hold legal title. So what is it then that they're assigning? All they're really doing, but it's a sham, is these MERS assignments are just simply indicating that the mortgage loan is being deactivated in the MERS system. Well, who needs to know that? But that's what those assignments are about, and they're being taken as valid transfer documents, and they are anything but.
Are any of the MERS documents and transfers valid? Any of them?
Oh, that's a good question. They might be assigning something, but the question of what they have to assign is going to change depending upon whether the instrument is a mortgage or a deed of trust. So if it's a mortgage, I'm from Massachusetts. Massachusetts is also a non-judicial foreclosure state. In Massachusetts, the law in our Commonwealth acknowledges that the note and the mortgage can be separated, can be held by different entities. However, in order to foreclose, they have to be rejoined, reunited under one principle before the statutory power of sale contained in the mortgage can be enforced. So in Massachusetts, you can have a MERS assignment of the mortgage to another entity, theoretically, because that's permissible under state law. But in any given case, is that valid? Probably not. If you have a loan that was securitized or sold into the secondary market to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, it might not be. So really boils down to some individual facts. But you asked me about the Seattle audit. There was a concerted effort to sweep everything under the table because actually it would have...
By who? Who made that concerted effort? I mean, it's easy to say there was, but who was they?
Sure. I can tell you who they are. It was the auditor's office and the city attorney's office. They didn't like some of my analysis and conclusions, which were well-founded. It's what I would do in any expert report, to lay the proper factual foundation, conduct the research, and then draw rational, factual conclusions. Their excuse was, well, those are conclusions of law, and you're not an attorney, and we didn't hire you to do that, which is not true. They actually did. They wanted me to determine whether those deed of trust assignments were valid. And so the city auditor wrote a 3-page memorandum that is merged on top of my report and then turned that into the Seattle City Council. I got wind of that, just an intuition I had, on the morning of when the presentation to the City Council was to be held. And I had enough time to read that memorandum and write my own letter to the chairman of the committee who ordered the audit and showed him why the memorandum was contrived. It's simply off base. But it was an attempt to subvert the entire project to, well, in the memorandum they say that they concluded that they should not endorse the report. And Councilmember Licata questioned the assistant city attorney on this and said, well, you wouldn't endorse anything anyway if you didn't research and write it, correct? So we shouldn't be talking about whether you're endorsing the report or not. You know, the report is for informational purposes. So it's very interesting. There is a video of that hearing. Council member Licata he got right to the heart of the controversy there between the city auditor's memorandum and my letter. And but in any event, nothing really came of it, although my report is being submitted in various state and federal courts in the state of Washington to back up positions in an individual case that a particular assignment of the deed of trust is also not valid, and here's why.
So the process is still going on. City attorney didn't lose his job. The city auditor didn't lose his job.
Oh, no.
Recorder didn't lose their job.
No. Oh, and that's another thing. So part of what we uncovered as we tried to gather the records from the King County Auditor's Office is that we found a number of problems that are serious because they are not properly and consistently indexing MERS in the grantor-grantee index. And this is really a huge problem because you can't just, you don't know if a particular deed of trust names MERS as the nominee for the lender if you don't actually download and open the document because they haven't properly indexed MERS.
So this
in all of them.
Would this allow them to commit fraud then? More easily?
Well, it removes a tremendous amount of transparency, and it had serious implications.
And the city attorney had no problem with this.
All I can say is you should read the memorandum written by the city auditor, which was co-authored, I believe, by the assistant city attorney, Kelly Stone, and the assistant city auditor, Virginia Garcia.
Did you understand a little bit of what she was saying? Again, this is an inch thick. This is the actual chain of title. It's an inch thick. Some fastidious home buyer insisted on this and paid a couple $100 more to have the actual chain of title that secures your ownership right. I doubt that the current occupant, Nanette, and her husband, Tariki, ever fought to pay the extra and get this and see exactly what's on there. Only when you look at the signatures and who notarized what and how can you determine. And I'm just really curious why Sheriff Bill Brown of Santa Barbara County is not pulling together a white-collar crime section to investigate, get them trained to catch fraud by the attorneys that record these things. Aren't you curious? I think it's absolutely necessary that Sheriff Bill Brown pull together some people, get them some training, because this is real high-tech white-collar crime. Really high-tech. But the reality is, real people like you and me get sheriffs coming to the door going, "You got 5 days to get out of the house." And then one of the crooksters comes by, one of the bank gangster agents, says, "Hey, if you don't fight us, we'll just give you $5,000 or $10,000 to get out of your house so you have something to rent a motel with. But you got to be out soon. Just give us the keys, sign this piece of paper, and we'll give you $5,000, $10,000. And I have come across a few dozen people in Santa Barbara County that took the cash for keys and were originally promised $15,000 or $10,000 and ended up, when the actual day came and they'd move their furniture out, they only got $5,000 or $8,000, less than what the crooksters had originally promised them. I'm telling you, there is a major pandemic of white-collar crime done by guys in nice suits and really nice ties, and they say all the nice, smart words in court. And you know who the judges are? The judges are people who used to be members of the Bar Association. They're all part of the same crooked club called the Bar Association. And just to remind you, the original 13th Amendment, which has never been unratified and was ratified and published for more than 40 years, has never been unratified. And that means if you take anything from any king, prince, or foreign power, which is what the Bar Association is, a foreign power, it's an agent of a foreign power outside the organic state and the organic United States, where we, the people, ordained and created the organic Constitution. That judge used to be a member, and as soon as he joined, bingo, he lost his U.S. citizenship. So let me ask you, can a foreign agent, can a Russian agent come over here and be elected judge? Can a Canadian come over here and be elected judge? Can an Indonesian or a communist Chinese come into a place and say, "Hey, I want to be your elected judge. Hey, governor, appoint me"? No, you can't. So you've got judges who don't have any right to sit on the bench. And I mean all of them, whether they're good judges or bad judges or they're indifferent. As soon as they joined the bar, they lost their citizenship. Unless they applied to get it back again, they're holding office in fraud. Talk about fraud on the court. This is massive fraud. But then you got the sheriff, and the sheriff is the most important person that you elect. Elections are coming up here next month, and there's a lot of talk about U.S. Senate seats and congressional seats and all this. Those aren't the ones that matter. You know, I got a phone call from some guy named Cunningham. He wants my vote. Now, 3 times I've tried to have an appointment with him. couldn't get an appointment with them. Same as Lois Capps, that Democrat that went out of office promising to only serve 2 terms. Then she stayed in, what, 4 or 5 terms? She lied. Tried to get an appointment with her. Over 10 years, I couldn't get an appointment to talk to Congresswoman Lois Capps. Remember her? Now it's Carbajal. I haven't asked him for an appointment, but I doubt if he would sit down with me and do an interview on several issues. Anyway, here's the other little clip where Marie McDonald talking specifically about fraud in the paperwork that's relevant here in Santa Barbara. Take it away, Marie.
County recorder to open an investigation or conduct an audit of some of the land records there. I can tell you that I actually have audited a property just down the street that was once owned by Randy Quaid and his wife.
Wow.
And their documents were forged.
Whose documents were forged?
Yeah,
County's or Quaid's?
Randy Quaid's. They were. In it, so one day he woke up and realized the property was no longer his. He didn't sell it, but his name is forged on the deed.
His name was forged on the deed?
Yes.
So he's telling the truth when he
Evie's as
said
well.
someone stole his home.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Wow.
And he's still hiding in Canada.
I wrote a letter in support of their petition to have their passports returned. I know they came into the States in Vermont, and I think they were successful in doing that, but I don't know where they are right now or what their circumstances are.
So they were telling the truth when they said they had been bamboozled out of their property and they hadn't done anything wrong.
Well, I can't go so far as to say that because there's a lot of missing information surrounding the real estate agency who actually sold that property to a family by the name of Berman, who I think Randy and Evie knew through their acting careers. I forget what his position was in the studio, but in any event, there really is. If I had been involved in their case back, I'd have to go probably about 10 years ago, because now you can't find the documents, the parties and so forth. But I think that there would be grounds for a criminal investigation of what happened there.
Who would be the prime criminal suspect in that investigation? The real estate agency that had Mr. McQuaid sign documents?
He didn't sign documents. That's the issue.
Oh, he never did?
No, he never did. And actually, Evie kept some very good records, and she could prove that Randy was making a movie in some other state on that date. And she apparently wasn't around either. And certainly, and the way the numbers work just don't make any sense because they lost money selling a property that had increased in value. The way the numbers work just don't make any sense because they lost money selling a property that had increased in value.
And no investigation by the Santa Barbara District Attorney's Office was ever made, as far as you know?
As far as I know, no. And I don't think that they really knew for some years what had actually happened because they traveled around a lot. I think this was during a time when Randy was very busy with his acting career. I think they had other property as well, so they might not have actually come here or known
What was going on?
what was going on.
Interesting. Very interesting. So someone else now legally owns their property, or is their title in jeopardy because of what happened to the Quaids?
It could very well still be in jeopardy.
So you heard it from Marie. There was fraud. Why is Bill not investigating? Hello, Sheriff Bill Brown. You just heard it if you paid any attention. Marie McDonald says you need to do a white-collar investigation. This wasn't a trespass thing. This wasn't somebody shooting or armed robbery. This was white-collar, by the paperwork, signatures forged. He says the signature that she showed me isn't even close to her signature. So who could have forged them? Look at the chain of title. That's why these papers are important. Not just the most recent thing recorded at the county registers, because frankly, I'm not sure you can trust the county register of deeds and all the records. We're finding all over the country there's so much forgery and false records being laid down. Even though they're stamped, they're stamping a forged document. And then someone else, if they're contested, goes into court with a forged document. The fraud is massive. Somebody needs to investigate. Let's take a look at the wedding picture. Way back, many years ago. There they are, just married, all happy and smiley. Well, they're still married, and they're still relatively happy, but they're not smiling because they've been defrauded. Now, what Marie McDonald brought up was the fact that the house was sold at a price that was double its actual value, and then later sold for much, much less. Why doesn't Bill Brown look into this? Because he knows probably little or nothing about real estate. That's why Bill Brown needs to get some new people, not the old crooks, but some new people in the sheriff's department to create an investigative squad and get somebody who's honest, if you can find one, in the Santa Barbara District Attorney's office, filled with crooks since Tom Snedden was there 25 years, and then Christine Stanley, who covered up, made sure that Snedden didn't get arrested, because Snedden should have gone, I'm sorry, I just got to say this. Thomas W. Snedden Jr., the district attorney, should have gone to prison. Probably he's in a very hot place right now, wishing someone would throw some water down in hell for him. But what he did to Michael Jackson was just disgusting. And it looks like a pattern in practice in Santa Barbara with these multi-million-dollar homes. What's going on here? What are these people up to? I don't know if it can ever be cleaned up, but someone needs to pay. And I got a question for you, Sheriff Bill Brown. If the warrant's only about a trespass and there was no intent to trespass because they honestly believed it was their home, they still had keys to the guest house that worked, and they say they didn't break any mirror, regardless of whether it was a $1,000 mirror or a $7,000, why not drop the warrant and start investigating, and maybe you'll find out the current occupant and the Quaids have both been victims, as well as the title insurance company that's going to find out they're going to have to pay out big time. But then there's an issue. Since this warrant got the Quaids arrested at least 4 times, and the Quaids have got a Canadian judge to try to get the evidence against them, for which they wanted them extradited back to Santa Barbara, and Santa Barbara wouldn't give them the evidence. So a Canadian judge said, this is crap. You people go out of my courtroom, go free. So they went back into Vermont. And again, they tried to grab them with a warrant. And a Vermont judge said, okay, Santa Barbara, show us the evidence. And there was no evidence put forth. And then a letter came out of Indiana saying, show us the, and Santa Barbara won't show the evidence. It's beginning to look to me like the Santa Barbara, or some people in the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department, as well as the District Attorney's Department, are intentionally keeping the Quaids at arm's length. So the fraud on the court, the fraud on the records, the fraudulent for loans and sale of the property, which the Quaids say they didn't agree to sell. They didn't even know the property had been sold. They thought they still owned the home. It looks like all this is being done to keep the Quaids away so they can't come back and fight honestly. They don't want to go back into jail, and they shouldn't have to. So why not just drop the silly warrant? I mean, remember, this is the county where they had a multi-million-dollar arrest warrant for Michael Jackson, and he voluntarily turned himself in, put up an all-cash bond, millions of dollars in cash, And then the jury said, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Bam! To the district attorney's office. Crooked bunch of thieves, thugs, and scum of the Bar Association. Tom Mesereau and Susan Yu really put them down. And they deserved it because they were crooks. And Ron Zonen should have been indicted. And Auchincloss, Gordy Auchincloss should have been indicted. Ron Zonen should have been indicted, as well as Tom Sneddon. And Ron and Gordy are still alive. They could still be indicted, in my opinion, for fraud on the court. They should have known these witnesses were lying through their teeth while they're trying to make a settlement through the back door to drop the charges criminally if you give me a couple $1 million. And this time, Michael Jackson stood his ground. Well, Evie and Randy are not used to sitting in jails. So it looks to me like the Sheriff's Department and the District Attorney's Department are in on this. Let's take a quick look at this picture. What do you think Randy's thinking today? He's thinking ABC didn't really cover this story, NBC didn't cover this story. Even the Santa Barbara News Press didn't really cover this story the way William Wagner is. Now, I'm not saying I'm doing a great job. I'm just saying I'm at least bringing the issue up. Let's look at the paperwork. Let's have some real experts, some forensic experts, signature experts, and let's find out who really signed the documents. Because Quaid said they didn't sign anything to sell anything. They thought they had purchased a home. So why can't Sheriff Bill Brown pull together an expert team to look at it? If you don't have one, then you should hire someone from outside and stop trusting the district attorneys. I know you got to work with them, but remember, the elected DA, Sneddon, did not only to Michael Jackson. Remember when Michael Jackson was arrested, he said, and there were other unindicted defendants. Well, we never heard about any indictments to any of the other unindicted defendants. They just wanted to destroy Michael Jackson, a good man who gave more money to children's charities than all the other people put together. Shame on my county of Santa Barbara. Shame on the district attorney's office. I'm still waiting for a callback from the DA, though I do have to thank Chris Gottschalk. He did at least call me back and acknowledge that he was aware that I'm trying to look at the evidence. I don't think they have any real evidence. Is a fingerprints of either of the Quaids on any broken glass from a mirror? Do they have anything other than stuff that belongs to the Quaids in the lockup locker? I don't know. They won't show it. They just want the Quaids to come back and get arrested again. Meanwhile, the Quaids have lost probably in excess of $1 million a year for Randy not working. Because you can't work if you got a warrant out for your arrest and you know what film set you're on. So figure about 10 years, $1 million a year, $10 million probably owed to the Quaids if they sue for wrongful persecution. I think that's the real reason the sheriffs and the DA will not look at this as a white-collar crime by somebody else who had access to the signatures. Not the Quaids, not the Zarickis, probably not the real estate agent, probably not the title officer, probably not the escrow officer, but somebody else who signed contracts with Randy Quaid had access to his signature. Who would have had access to his signature? Who would have had access to those contracts? Time to get off your butt, Bill Brown. Get an expert forensic team going on this. That's William Wagner's thought. Now, if we had a DA like the DA I'm going to show you, I think this thing would have been over way back. In the first few months the warrant was put out, it would have been recalled.
Where individual rights are supposed to be protected,